Okay guys, today I want to talk to you about the way that I build beats on the Singular Sound BeatBuddy live. Now, to do this you have to have a couple of extra pieces of gear. I use the Arturia Beatstep Pro, which is a Midi sequencer. Looks like this, alongside the BeatBuddy. Now, to get the information flowing correctly, we need two other pieces of gear. We can use two event processors from Midi Solutions, or if you have something else which will allow you to map MIDI signals and filter them, that's what you can use. Now, for this example, I'm going to talk about using the event processors. Again, it can be any other MIDI device or MIDI software. I have some custom software that I use, and we'll talk about that in a different video. So, let's talk about the way that you have to set this up first, physically. You need to have the BeatBuddy, the MIDI out, connected into the first event processor, and then from there into the Beatstep Pro, and then from there into the second event processor, and then that loops back around to the BeatBuddy. So you have a cycle, right? That's why we have to add some filtering in a second. Okay, so we have these set up correctly, physically. The next thing is that we need to program the event processors, or something else that can do the mapping and the filtering. Let's go over to the event processor. Now, looking at the first one has something right up here. See what this is doing? This is mapping a MIDI event. It is taking control change 102 and taking its value, and it's going to use that to do a program change on the Beatstep Pro. That's because in order to change drum patterns on the Arturia Beatstep Pro, it takes program change messages. So what this does is whenever the BeatBuddy switches from one song part to another, it will switch the Arturia Beatstep Pro to a different drum pattern. Now, notice the MIDI channel has to be 10 on the Arturia Beatstep Pro, and it's going to be 1 from the BeatBuddy. Now, I also do one other thing, and that's the scaling. The values 1 to 127 get scaled from 0 to 126. You might need to alter these a little bit just depending on your usage. That's all you need for the first event processor. Now let's talk about the second event processor. The most important thing with it is, remember how I talked about it's a cycle? We want to make sure that we don't have an infinite loop, because that can do crazy stuff with the rhythms. You can have things starting and stopping. So let's look at that. This first setting is actually just a filter to filter out start messages. The second one is a filter to filter out the MIDI stop messages. And the third one is to filter out the timing clock messages. Remember, the Beatstep Pro is receiving these from the BeatBuddy. We don't want the Beatstep Pro to send it back around to the BeatBuddy. This fourth setting is taking the note on messages from the Beatstep Pro on channel 10 and sending it to channel 1 to control the note on messages for the BeatBuddy. I don't think this one is necessary, but this will take the note off messages and map them from channel 10 to channel 1 to send to the BeatBuddy. Now we need to do a couple of other things. The next steps are to make sure we have a couple settings set correctly on the BeatBuddy. Let's take a look at that. So going down to the BeatBuddy, we need to make sure a couple of things. We need to go into the settings, and then we need to go down to main pedal. We need to go to MIDI settings. Then we need to go to MIDI in, make sure that MIDI note on is enabled. Now MIDI note off, I just kind of ignore this, but you can use it if you want. That's it there. We need to go to MIDI out, make sure that our channel is set correctly. We need to make sure that your output tied if it's just MIDI out. Make sure you have sync and start. These should be enabled correctly by default. But the really important thing is to make sure that next part is set to enabled. For some of you, this actually may be turned off by default. So you need to go and make sure that you correct for that. Okay, so once we have that set correctly on the BeatBuddy, we need to make sure that everything is set correctly on the Beatstep Pro. Let's go over to that. Really, the basic thing is over here. There's a sync right here that determines whether you're syncing to an internal clock, to USB, to MIDI, or to some other clock source. You're going to want to set to MIDI, the third one. Now, because of how I have it running right now, I'm running it with USB and some mappers. I'm going to leave it there for the purpose of showing you this demo. So that's set correctly on there. Now we have one other thing that we need to have on the BeatBuddy. We need to make sure that we have songs which have empty drum patterns, but still have fills, and really you still probably want to have the intro, because the Arturia Beatstep Pro is not going to help you with the fills. You want to have those preloaded. And you can actually see this. I'm going to start this and it's going to be empty because I'm not running the Arturia Beatstep Pro at the moment. Okay, see how it's empty? Now, notice how I press the transition. It goes to part 2, but that's also empty. That's what I'm looking for, okay? Because I'm going to make the Arturia Beatstep play those drum patterns. Okay, so let's show an example of setting one of these patterns up. So let me start the BeatBuddy and switch over to the Beatstep Pro. You see how it started up. Now what I like having is I like having a little metronome to make sure I give myself a good beat. This is if you're starting from the beat. You could also start from a loop where you have a click track and then just add this afterwards. So let me give it a little click track here to do it this way. Now, you can add in stuff this, using the step sequencer right here, or you can actually record it directly in. Let me do a simple beat. Okay, see how simple that was? And you can control lots of different sounds here. Different cymbals and toms, all that stuff. But the important thing is now we have to save this. Let's save this to pattern 1. So it will correspond with the pattern from the BeatBuddy. Now let's go to the next song section now that we've saved that. So I'm going to do a transition. Now notice how now we're on track 2. Remember, you can ignore these if you're not familiar with your Arturia Beatstep Pro. Look up a tutorial on the Beatstep Pro if you're uncertain about those. But now we're on track 2. Let me give myself a metronome here as well. Now I'm going to try to come up with a different beat so you can just see how it differs. Okay, and you notice how I changed some of the beats there. Now we're going to save this. We're going to save this to, notice how I did that. Now, what I'm going to do now is illustrate that I have these 2 patterns saved. I can switch between them. So, let's go to the BeatBuddy. We're going to do a transition. Notice how it switched to 1. And you hear how the beat sounds different. Let's try that again. And just like the BeatBuddy, it will transition at the end of the measure. So it has a nice way to line up. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to trigger the ending on the Beatstep Pro. Pretty cool, right? Now just to show it again, let's start the BeatBuddy. Now let's also illustrate the fills. The fills work pretty good. Let me show you that again. So you hear the fills. Now, true, it is merging the beats from the Arturia, but it works out pretty fine, I think. Works out okay. I think the only time it would probably be a problem is if you needed to mute the drums entirely. And for that, you can probably just use the mute button on here if you wanted to. Now, given that isn't hands-free, but that's one option. Okay. There's a couple of other nice features, just if you're not familiar with the Beatstep Pro, and that's that you can add some randomness to do some strange things. Right? See how that changed up a little bit? You can also do this strange thing here, which is sort of a MIDI hold or looper on some notes based upon the time subdivision. Okay, cool. Let's stop that. Hopefully I've covered everything. Let me know if you have any questions or if I missed anything. Thank you guys. Please subscribe.